Welcome back to a very special Star Wars The Last Jedi edition of This Film Is Lit. Since it is a very special episode, we're joined by a very special guest, the one, the only, Mr. Sam Pixley from Three Wise Radio. You may know him. He's also my best friend. We're up visiting Chicago to see the movie. We just got out. What did you guys think of Star Wars The Last Jedi?
I think you said it right there, special. And it's special to be here, guys.
It is special.
What are we going, right off the cuff?
Sort of like first impressions, just like it is very fresh. We've only seen it once, and we've only just seen it about an hour ago. So these are all very raw impressions of how we felt about the film. And we don't go spoilers yet, sorry.
I definitely liked it. I mean, I had strong feelings about it. It definitely felt modern in the way that like some of the jokes were incorporated and things like that. Like it definitely felt like a more modern movie. Definitely felt a little less like the concerns that people have with Force Awakens. Yeah. Like, oh, it's just a rehashing of those old movies. This one felt like it knew its place and knew the time that it was coming out. Yeah,
it was very different than what I was expecting, and it was funny because when the credit or the opening crawl rolled, Eileen, you joked, I was like, oh, so it starts exactly the same way Empire does. And then none of the rest of the movie is anything like any other Star Wars movie, except for a little. I mean, obviously there are moments and things that they pull and that sort of thing. But what did you think, Katie?
I really liked it.
Yeah, I did too. Just to kind of, in general, I really enjoyed it. But I think it's going to benefit from repeat viewing. Yeah, I think.
No, there's a lot happening. And going on that I think a second viewing would definitely be beneficial.
Agreed.
Yeah, there's a lot happening, and I think I mentioned it. I think it's going to benefit in the way that Force Awakens maybe didn't. Whereas Force Awakens, after you watch it a second or third time, which I still really liked it, you sort of recognize how reminiscent a lot of the elements are, and how while there is new stuff and interesting stuff, it's definitely wasn't really. It was very much a safe bet to do what they did. But yeah, so where 7 was very safe with what they were doing to an extent, this one very much not so. Very different. Like I said, I don't think any of the things I expected to happen in general. Maybe a couple things vaguely happened that I expected, but overall, like a lot of it wasn't what I thought was going to happen in the film. Kind of the direction it went, and it was a very had some really interesting moments when we get into spoilers that I was like, just what? That is very different. That is not what I was expecting at all.
Oh, I had not really thought about what might or may not happen. So I went in with almost no preconceived ideas of anything. And I thought it was interesting. Yeah. It's definitely different from other Star Wars movies.
There were definitely some moments where I wasn't completely like... There were some unexpected moments, but none of the like the big things that I had kind of thought about, like, oh, what if they do this? Would this be a big risk? Like, I don't think there were many huge risks taken in this. Personally, with big characters, like let's not get into not getting into spoilers, but some smaller scale stuff. This was the first one that I also really felt the Disney handprint on.
Really?
Yeah.
More so than 7?
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was more than 7.
I felt the rhythm of the comic book genre in this one a lot more than in 7. Where with that one, I really felt like, okay, we're definitely doing like a Star Wars rehash. This one, the not the process of it, but the pacing and everything felt a lot more like that world.
I can see that. Because I did one thing that I did, and it I don't know if it bothered me a little bit, but the humor did at times when they hit the joke felt very like it's been 10 minutes, a dramatic moment happened, joke moment.
They plugged things in.
Like, kind of, a little bit. Now, not a lot, but I know what you're talking about, and I definitely didn't notice that, and it didn't bother me, but I did notice that it felt like that every 10 or 15 minutes we have to have that punchline joke from one of the characters that kind of, I don't know, and that's just a vague impression that I got a little bit, but
it doesn't bother. It's just that's the formula. Yeah. And I knew I was in the formula.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I still have to rewatch and think about it more because it didn't bother me, and it didn't. I guess I did notice it, but not at the same time because it felt because so much else felt different, and I think while there's no huge risks in terms of like the main characters, in a way, I think there also are really risky moments that are like could or could not work depending on how they did them, and we'll talk. And some we talked about you felt, or we weren't sure if they worked or not, and that sort of thing. So I think there was risks in that in the way they executed stuff, but in terms of like who lives, who dies, that sort of thing, or like where's the character story going? Yeah, there weren't any like major like left field turns. I don't think.
Well, I think in a way though, Disney is still kind of testing the waters with Star Wars.
What do you mean?
Well, if you think about it, with Episode 7, rebooting the franchise was already the risk. Like, that was the gamble.
Yeah.
So they gave us something very familiar. Something that we could be comfortable with. That would be something we already liked. So that was a success. So now they're pushing the envelope just a little bit in terms of formula. Yeah. And I think maybe then Episode 9 will be even more... Maybe. Pushing the boundaries even a little bit more.
It's funny you say that because it sounded like Sam was saying that he saw more of the formula in this than he saw in 7, which
but
I don't know if I agree with.
But a different formula, though. Yeah. Not a Star Wars formula.
Yeah.
That wasn't so much the storyline recipe as much as it was like the pacing and like the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
Was what felt the least Star Wars-y to me.
Because there was a lot of action in this, like even more so than most Star Wars films. Like a lot. Like there were set pieces like constantly. Yeah. Almost throughout the whole thing. Like there's only a little break kind of in the middle with Rey and Luke, and that's not really a spoiler, where it kind of slows down at all. And even that has its own kind of action sequences in it. So yeah, it definitely hits hot and fast with the action, but it also I don't know. It's a very different than what I was expecting for some reason. And I don't even know what I was expecting. It just wasn't exactly what it was. But I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was really fun. I don't know how much we can really discuss without getting into spoilers, because like any actual nitpicks or things we liked are almost essentially going to have to be spoilers, I would think.
I mean, if anything, I would say that it's a sign of a good movie that if there are problems like that for me being able to detect, like, being in a formula, but being forgiving of it, is because there's other good things going on. And also, I think they have to, I don't know if you guys know this, but Disney thinks big picture.
It's true.
They're thinking, empire, not literally. Strikes Back, but just like a literally empire.
The empire.
Yeah.
They really are the empire.
But in order for them to do that and be able to say, well, eventually we're just going to start doing movies that are about nothing, they have to start mixing up. Like, you're not going to be able... You have to kind of redefine what it means to be a Star Wars movie.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, you have to open up a little bit.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Give us something familiar first.
Yeah.
And then push the envelope.
And this one was the one that was the most jarring for me because it started to breach that.
Yeah.
The next one I'll be more comfortable with it because I saw this one and then eventually they'll make movies that have nothing to do with the Skywalker saga.
Yeah. No, they won't. They will, but I mean, yeah. And I think this is a good place to transition into spoilers because while there was so much, I think what they did a good job of, and this is now spoilers, is having moments that while the overall thing definitely pushed in new directions that made it feel a lot different and fresh for the Star Wars film, it also had lots of moments that were very clearly like... a couple little ones in particular. Obviously the standoff between Kylo Ren and Luke is very reminiscent of the Darth and Obi-Wan standoff, and figured that's where it was going basically. Which one sequence that I really enjoyed was on the final planet on Crate when Chewie and whatchamacallit are flying the Millennium Falcon, the porgs. The porg's not doing anything. The porg's just sitting there. But Chewie and Rey are flying the Millennium Falcon, and they help rescue everybody. That whole sequence where they're flying through the planet, and I thought was really neat. But it's also really reminiscent of the Return of the Jedi when Lando takes the Millennium Falcon into the
deep trench run.
Yeah, the half-built Death Star, and all the red, because in that it's all the red metal parts. But it was like, it's very similar. So, and there's moments like that throughout the film that felt very Star Warsy. Obviously, I mean,
there's still a lot of mirroring,
a lot of rhyming, as George Lucas would say. But so what did you guys think of the big revelation of which I actually kind of thought this might be? It was one of my like top 2 or 3 of who Rey's parents are, assuming it's true and he wasn't lying, but. So Kylo says that your parents are nobody. Yeah. You're just
druggies.
Yeah, they are junkers, I think he says. Desert junkers.
That sold you for beer.
Yeah. Do you like that, or would you rather she had been
I think it's a smart move because it also gives you freedom in the future.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, we can actually get away from this now once all of these people either tap out from being in these movies or dying of old age or tragedies or whatever. Yeah. It's a smart choice.
Yeah. If assuming he was telling the truth, which I think he was, I like it. And it's kind of, it was either, my bank was on either she's nobody or she's Han and Leia's kid. And now that's a whole other can of worms. But I was kind of leaning that direction, that there was something going on with her being the other solo child.
And I think they led to that with like the whole like, oh, they're connected somehow. And I thought that was
they were really setting it up that way.
Yeah, they really built it up that way. And I kind of was relieved almost when he's like, you're nobody. You're a garbage person. Because also like looking back on like the whole idea of like bloodlines and that also kind of, I never felt that in Star Wars. I felt it as more of like, oh, the Skywalker it's just a father and son thing, well, and daughter, but it's not like, oh, their bloodline is so pure, because well, what's her name, Shmi Skywalker or whatever her original name was, like she's a nobody, like there's nothing there, she's just a slave lady on a planet. So,
and I also think it ties in better thematically with her being, just some random nobody, with the whole idea of the resistance, of the rebels. If the only people that can lead this thing and be our heroes are from some ancient bloodline of amazing chosen Jedi, it's like, that's not what the resistance is about. The resistance is about being amazing people coming out of nowhere and banding together. Not like, oh, you're super. That's like royalty thing. That's like something the Empire would be into.
And also the idea of the Force. Like, oh, well, the Force is a little choosy when it comes to it. It's got its favorite families. Like, it would just be a regular person that gets thrust into this because right place, right time.
And that, too, gives them a window if they do want to take this franchise away from the Skywalker storyline. Got a nice little window now.
As much as you say you don't want them to, like...
No, I do.
A thing for me was always, like, I knew that I was never going to be satisfied with the way that Luke Skywalker's story ended, because you always had this idea of, like, what he would become after the movies ended, so... best in my mind to just get away from it, because you're not going to be able to do it.
Speaking of that, I was a little disappointed with what they chose to do to an extent, because I felt like he had his moment in this, which actually makes sense, I guess, because he's an old man, and but he didn't. So I guess the little kid in me wanted to see Luke Skywalker fuck up a bunch of people with a lightsaber one more time. But I say one more time, not that he ever really did.
Never did.
Yeah, he did a little bit on Return of the Jedi.
Crush all those walkers with his hands or something.
I just and so it actually makes sense and is very fitting for him, that because his thing was that he was very connected to the Force, and through his training and that sort of thing, he wasn't like an amazing fighter or whatever. But, so I guess it does make sense to have his big moment be like this all-draining power moment where he summons all of the Force to project himself
across the galaxy.
And then, but I guess the thing that disappointed me most was that it was such a fun line when he said, "See you around, kid," to Kylo Ren after that, and then he just becomes a Force ghost, I guess, right immediately after. I was like, oh, I was hoping we'd see him again. There would be some final moment in the third movie where he had, I don't know.
Well, maybe
you still can.
It's true.
Maybe he'll be a Force ghost.
That's fair. He can totally come back and be he will. He 100%
also,
will.
The laws of becoming a Force ghost were like extremely rare, and now everybody's doing it, because I think that was the big thing with Qui-Gon, is like, oh, Qui-Gon and Yoda, he like figured out, like, oh, we figured out how to actually become like a Force ghost, and then now everybody's just doing it. But I enjoyed it. Again, it was more of the things like, I don't think Luke Skywalker would necessarily brush his shoulder off after surviving Laser Blast.
Moment for me. I wasn't a big fan of that.
That to me was part of that. Like, we got to put something silly in here because you can't just have a powerful moment. We got to put a little like, that Luke, was that always cheeky guy. It's like, never.
Yeah, that was almost probably my least favorite part of the whole movie. Was that one, because it was such a great moment overall, and it made and. Because initially you think it's like him just blocking all the lasers, with the Force, but, he's not actually there. But it was such a great moment and so cool. And then, he comes out and he brushes his shoulder. I'm almost like, really? Like, he would just walk forward. Like, he wouldn't do that. I don't know. That felt, and I see what you're saying. In moments like that where it was like,
Not everybody needs to have Iron Man sass.
No, not everybody needs to be that character. Well, and Luke isn't that character.
I could be wrong here. I could be getting my periods mixed up, but I think that's one of the hallmarks of post modernism.
Wow.
Postmodernism.
Postmodernism, or I think some people like to call it like new cynicism, maybe.
Yeah.
I've heard that bandied around.
I know cynicism.
It's this idea where you always undermine the powerful moment. I don't really know to what purpose.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree.
Who, we as audience members,
no,
or
like in a story. In your story, like that's something that modern stories are doing now, is undermining those powerful moments. You know, they have a joke.
That is the joke after the big moment. But to me, that wasn't the moment or the character to do it with. If you're going to do it in that moment, do it with a different character. Like, if you want to do that, which they do a lot, and that's, like you said, that happens in comic book movies, and that's the thing, is that you have your big moment, and then somebody makes a joke afterwards.
That's a Poe Dameron. That's a Han Solo. Yeah. That's your character. That's the whole time is like that. This is all a joke.
Yeah,
but it's one of the hallmarks of this era that we're in now of storytelling.
Yeah, because they even do it with somebody else. They do it with the guy on the ship because on the shuttle because immediately after that, Kylo says, "Take me down to the Earth," and then Hux is like, "You're not going down there," and then he throws him through the wall or whatever. And the guy's like, "Yep, take you right down, buddy." Yes, like, so they have that moment, but I don't know. I agree that I thought that was just very out of character and didn't really. Yeah, make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was just such a strange thing.
Speaking of another moment that was potentially problematic, what did you think of Leia surviving being blown into space?
It was just, to me, it felt so poorly done. Just the her. So we get to a point where Kylo also makes the decision not to blow up his mom.
Yeah.
Because he somehow got her targeted. And right as he makes that decision not to, the two fighters behind him make a very different decision.
That ain't their mom on that ship.
and it felt, she blew up. Everyone blew up, but she's spinning through space, and she's frozen because space.
Yeah.
And then her arm slightly moves, her hand slightly moves a little bit, and then she begins to stay still, but float back towards the ship, and then kind of tap on the door with her frozen hand. And then somehow they open that door without all getting sucked out.
Yeah.
And then she just kind of collapses, and they're like, "Oh, she's lost consciousness." So, did she make that decision? Was that a forced decision to be able to float back?
I think so. I think the idea is that is what happened. That because she knows she knows the Force is strong in their family. She knows she has a connection to the Force. I think the idea is that, she because in the moment right before she gets blown into space, she gathers herself. It seems like there's a close up of her, and she seems very, I don't know, not sullen, but something comes over, and then she gets sucked out into space. And I think the idea is that she went into force.
She went into a force
stasis,
cocoon.
Yeah, a force cocoon to stop herself from being. I don't know. It's a little strange. I definitely didn't love it. I don't know. I was very conflicted because I liked it a little bit, and I thought it made sense that Leia should be able to, maybe not even necessarily do any, it almost more of a fight or flight thing where it's not like she's really even knows what she's doing. It's just sort of since
instinctual power.
Yeah, just sort of since her and Luke and them are so strong with the Force that it just sort of happens, and it's just sort of her survival thing kicks in, and the Force kind of takes over. I don't know. I didn't love it, but
I think that just goes with the inconsistencies of because when Luke started with the Force, he sucked.
Yeah.
And I guess we're just assuming then that Leia has maybe been dabbling with growing in her
that's
power,
the idea.
And we just kind of accept that. But for me, it had too many similarities to, for some reason, just the way that she kind of glided through. I couldn't not get out of my head Superman imagery of him going into a Kryptonian sleep hibernation sleep cocoon, which would bring him back to life, and that feeling of she just maybe if it had been done in a different way of her maybe still when they looked out the window things were blown up, but she was still sitting there in some kind of stasis or something. But the fact that she blew out and then floated herself back to the door, it just could have been better done.
Yes.
And that was just felt really sloppy.
I think the thing that was exactly my feeling was that if they could have done the exact same thing and the Force could have saved her, but just don't have her fly back to the ship, just have her stick there, and they see her that she's still out there. And seems to be alive, and she's
or she's just floating there after the explosion. like floating inside the wreckage of the ship.
Oh, right.
And they don't even
yeah.
go get her. They just see her floating there,
Yeah.
and they see her maybe like move a little bit.
Yeah.
And like,
I
what
agree.
the hell is that?
I think they could have done it in a way that wasn't quite so Mary Poppins-y, because I couldn't help get that out of my mind. Like, if she had an umbrella being pulled, like, it would look...
It would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Because she literally is just like standing there with her arm extended, floating towards it.
Yeah.
And that was, that took me out of it.
What about you, Katie? What did you think of that moment?
It wasn't great.
Yeah. It's just something about
Agreed.
it. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan.
I mean, I'm glad her character wasn't dead.
Yeah. Because I thought they just unceremoniously killed her off for a minute. I was like, wow, that was it. But I knew they didn't because I'd heard them say beforehand and them discuss that they didn't kill her in the movie. You know, because people after Carrie Fisher died speculated that like, oh, they're gonna kill her off or something, and they said they didn't change it and that she would have been a big part of the third movie. So I was like, well, then
She felt like a big part of this one too.
Yeah. She definitely was a major player. Her and Luke both had pretty much equal.
Yeah.
So Leia's definitely. Now it's an interesting thing because they are doing the thing where they're killing off one of each of the
Right.
Yep.
the original
one movie at a time.
A trio, one movie at a time, and this was Luke's turn. But although he doesn't really die, he just kind of becomes one with the Force.
Space Ghost. Or Force Ghost, rather.
What about spoiler moments that we actually really liked, or is there any other not nitpicky, but any other moments that, Katie, was there any moment in particular that you didn't find satisfying or thought was a little out of place? Or no?
Okay. Not a moment. I brought this up after we left the theater. They really sold us hard on the porgs.
Oh.
They were like, oh, porgs, they're so super cute, we're gonna sell 8 million toys.
Oh, they are.
They're super cute.
They're cute, sure, but all of the other animals were cuter.
I beg to disagree. Hard disagree. On the blue milk tit monster.
Oh, I was about to say, not including that one.
Not as cute.
Not including the blue milk tit monster. But like the foxy looking horse things.
There's a lot of Pokemon in this movie.
Yeah,
there are a lot of Pokemon.
And the little ice foxes. Yeah, those basically
cool.
were a Pokemon.
Which those were also in the trailer.
Barely.
The only other ones I'd
Yeah.
seen. But there's like one shot of them. Yeah.
I thought both of those things were cuter than
those
the
were
porgs.
cool.
I thought the porgs, actually, I didn't hate them. I liked the way that they were, again, like, these jokes did not need to be in this, but I liked the idea of, like, Chewie killed and cooked some of them. He was going to eat them, and Porg was like, what? Like, that was a very Disney thing, but I liked it. I enjoyed it. I still like to think Chewie did eat it.
Yeah, he totally did, I think. But I thought they might have overplayed the Porg a little bit, just like one or two too many times during that final, cutting back to it in the cockpit. Maybe just
because they did it twice.
They did it
the
at least
same
twice.
shot twice.
Yeah, they did it at least twice. I thought like it was like 3 times, but like even if it was twice, it felt. I was like, you did that joke once of the Porg in the like you don't need to go back to that. Well, we already did. I don't know, but so the Porg didn't live up to your
No.
I thought they were cute.
I'm proudly part of Porg
Porg
Nation. Hashtag Porg Nation.
I tweeted this, but I do think my theory holds true. The Porg are, in fact, grown-up midichlorians.
Confirmed.
It has been confirmed by George Lucas.
If you stay after for the post-credit scene,
it shows little. It's like a 60-minute nature documentary of the life cycle of a Porg. It starts as midichlorians. It's narrated by David Attenborough. It's great.
Powerful stuff. Really compelling.
So sit around for that one.
It was so weird when the movie was only an hour and a half long. We're like, wait, what is this? And then an hour documentary kicks in.
60-minute Porg documentary.
The only other inconsistency that I think kind of hit me and was it felt like they were getting real loose. And this is kind of similar to what we talked about with Leia, but we're getting real loosey-goosey with like what the Force does and people are capable of with it. I felt like some people are able to put visions in people, like now we're able to put visions in people's heads. Now we're able to like touch each other across the floor, like actually physically touch each other. Water is teleporting through the world.
Oh, right, yeah.
There's a scene where Snoke has been like linking those two together to make it think that they have some kind of connection when they don't. And at one point, she's in the rain and he's not. And when they come out of their like little vision meetup, he's wet.
Yeah.
Like what is?
I guess the idea is that they now, because I think what the problem with it is that we've never seen it in the movies, because in the extended universe of Star Wars. A lot of, and I don't know if these particular things we see in this are ever done or mentioned, but the Force does have a lot of more interesting. Lando agrees or disagrees. The Force is used for a lot more interesting and varied things within the universe of Star Wars across, outside of the films. And I would bet that in some of the lead-up books, maybe not, because there's not a lot of Force in a lot of the lead-up books. They tend to deal with, like, the First Order and what they're doing. But, I think it is all of a sudden a lot of extra interesting things to throw in one movie that the Force can suddenly do that we've never really seen before, really. But we've seen hints of moments like that. Like the whole... Because the moment with... in Empire when Luke goes into that tree and confronts a Darth Vader, like that, that's like a Force vision or whatever or something, so we've seen elements that are similar, just not exactly the same. Because that, how else would you explain that as some sort of weird Force vision? Or
I think that to me was always just that they said that like Dagobah was so saturated with Force energy or whatever that, and you got to kind of let that go. Also, I was younger and less critical thinking.
Right. But it is a similar thing, and whether or not it was the planet's Force powers creating it, or in this one, a person that's very strong with the Force. I don't know. It didn't bother me too much. I thought it all kind of made sense, or at least didn't. It wasn't like, well, wait, we can do that with the Force. That's crazy. I thought
that was it didn't bother me so much as it just makes me again question, like, you've always got kind of this thing with like the escalation. We all, like people like to equate it to like the Dragon Ball Z escalation, where people just have to keep getting stronger to keep it interesting. Like this person gets more powerful, so the next person has to get more powerful. It's difficult to do that in this Star Wars universe where, like, when the Force and Jedi and Force users were at their prime was so long ago, and the teachings keep getting more and more diluted, but somehow, like, new abilities and things keep manifesting. You're like, so what's, like, how does that work? Like, do the teachings mean nothing and it's just, like, how bad do you want it to utilize these powers? And I think also the other part of that ties in with just Snoke as a character. You want to start talking about
I think that's a good place to talk about Snoke, because that was one place I wanted to go. So Snoke dies in this movie, or at least we assume he does. He got cut into 4 pieces. So
the last Sith Lord that got cut in half did not die.
That's what I'm saying. You never know. But that was interesting, and I actually really liked that. But I'm also, and this kind of ties into my thoughts about the end of the movie in general, is like they can do whatever the fuck they want with the third movie, because like we don't even know what, like, everybody, like, it's just kind of primed, so nobody important dies other than Luke, kind of. So everybody's primed and ready to go into the third movie, but we don't really have an evil Sith Lord anymore. I mean, it's Kylo Ren, he killed, so essentially he did become the master because he killed his Sith Lord.
But there's still conflict.
There's still conflict, which is interesting.
And also, I think, well, yeah, I guess, I'm trying to get all over the place.
Yeah,
the thing with Snoke that threw me off was, like, and I guess maybe I think actually the more I think about it, the more I actually like the idea of maybe Snoke is like, because big reveal, who is he? We still don't know. He is just a gross-looking old man that wears a yellow silk bathrobe.
Yeah.
And that's it. And he's like, oh, I'm so good at this. And it's like, you're actually not that great at this.
No. Because he can see into Kylo Ren's heart and see that he's going to kill somebody. He just doesn't realize the person he's going to kill is.
Yeah, when that was a little on the nose to me when he's like, he's grabbing his blade, he's striking on down the lightsaber, his true enemy, and then just like that to me was a little bit like, all right, let's just wrap this thing up.
I liked it. I thought it worked pretty well in that scene. I enjoyed it. It was a little on the nose, but I thought in the sort of drama of the moment it worked. Like in any less of a grandiose room with any crazy or with any less insane of a looking villain and that sort of thing, it would have been like stupid. But in that setting, it like worked for me, and I thought it made sense. But
I just couldn't get past. Like I'm sure that at some point when he got all that damage that he did, his manhood was cut off, because I think when he was giving that delivery of that line, you would have seen a massive erection through that bathrobe. I can't get past his attire. Like, he's wearing a yellow like silk bathrobe, and I can't get past it.
I don't know. It's like a gold robe. It's very like
comfortable.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it is, but
when you're the supreme ruler,
it just felt very. I mean,
you're the supreme ruler.
Yeah, that's fair. I just couldn't. Something about him threw me off.
I think the thing that maybe bothered me the most about him, it wasn't even him. It was just, it was how little we still knew about him and how.
I don't think it matters. I think he was always kind of a red herring.
I agree that he was probably always set up to just be sort of a pawn, not a pawn, but like a red herring, like this is it's the big bad guy, not really.
Yeah.
But I guess because we knew so little about him and people spent so long speculating on who he could be, and then most people finally came to the idea that he's probably not anybody. He's not the fucking reanimated. But that's the thing,
to say he's not anything. He's also like an extremely powerful Sith Lord who's able to do things that we've never seen before. Right. So like, there's that.
Yeah.
So that almost demands answers.
It begs the question of like, well, okay, yeah, you're right. I agree with that. Where you can't, if you build a guy up like this who's this big, powerful dude that we don't know anything about, and you do it as a red herring, we at least need to know a little bit of where he came from, just so we're not like, well, where the fuck is this guy? Like, what?
Yeah, even if he just been like, for 200 years, I've been in the dark waiting, watching other Sith Lords rise and fall, then it would have been fine. Like, okay, he's just some dude that's really good, but for him to just be like...
I think that is the implication. I think that may be touched on in the books. I haven't read all of them, but I think there is in one of the books, one of the Aftermath books, which is one of the prequels to this movie, I think, technically. I think it is touched on that he has been way out in the middle of nowhere, biding his time, sort of just waiting, as the implication that it sounds like from I've heard. It wasn't in one of the ones that I read, but I think that is alluded to, and now that doesn't do anything if you haven't read the book, obviously. But I think that is actually basically his backstory, is that he has been on his own, out on the outer rim, waiting for the rest of shit to go down for him to swoop in and take power, basically. So I think it is what you said.
And I don't think that's a problem, except for a very niche group like myself who really likes the Star Wars universe and wants to know more about it, but is too lazy to actually read the extra material. So overall, not a big concern.
Yeah. I really, that fight scene was really satisfying after he kills Snoke. That was a fun little team up, like, superhero moment of like, Kylo Ren and Rey fucking up shit together. And then that stops very quickly and their relationship ends very quickly. I liked that. I think that was one of my favorite things, is that
necessity.
Yeah, the necessity, but also just of them bonding in that, or coming together in that moment. But also just I still don't know where Kylo Ren's going to end up on this thing. You know what I mean? Like, I still don't. He still feels very. As we talked about in the first one, he was like the most compelling character, and had some of the more interesting character motivations of any Star Wars villain, really, that we'd ever seen. Even more so than like Darth Vader. He has the whole prequels that set it up, but like in just one movie, we really kind of got a feeling for where he was coming from. Mm-hmm. And I was a little worried early in this movie that they were going to switch it and he was going to be like the sleeper agent the whole time, because when he was like the way some of his early interactions with Rey and the way they were talking, and he's like, "Well, Luke didn't tell you what happened in the 10th." I was like, is he going to have been like under deep cover? Because I would be so disappointed if that's
deepest cover.
Deep
I know.
cover.
I was like really hope that's not the case, but and it wasn't. I'm glad that wasn't the case. But I still think what they did with him and having him kill Snoke, but then still crave that power that that he was trying to seek from Snoke, and then it wasn't killing Snoke. He didn't, because it would have been real easy for him to kill Snoke and then like. I say easy, then we wouldn't have had a bad guy. But for him to kill Snoke and then like, all right, let's now I'm good, not good, but like leaning that direction again and kind of moving and going with Rey. I felt like they could have done that, and I'm glad they didn't. And it's still a muddy mess with him.
I'm trying to determine if I really like, because I'm trying to figure out his motivations and if I think that if I'm really impressed by them, or now I just don't quite grasp them, because it feels like he's almost at a point where, in the original he was like, oh man, I want to live up to the legacy of Darth Vader, and I want to be that guy. But it almost feels like at this one it shifted to he's just so like he hates so much about essentially about legacy. Like he's turned on and is like, everything that's old needs to go. Like Sith need to go, Jedi need to go, like everything that is trying to dictate who we're supposed to be needs to go. But he has, like, the childish mindset of, like, okay, but I'll set things, like, I'll make it in my image. I just have to get rid of everything that existed before.
I think that is it, and I think that's an interesting, but because it's also, because he has his whole arc was shaped by his, he's the son of, the two most famous people in the galaxy, the grandson of the most infamous person in the galaxy. His uncle is, the most famous Jedi of all time. So yeah, he has a lot of baggage, and so it makes sense for him to want to just almost cut off all this fucking baggage now and just and restart this thing because, but he also still really craves that power because he's from that upbringing of being, the least important person in the family of the most important people in the galaxy. He's forever has that little man syndrome of I have to be, he wants to be that he wants that power, like all Sith do. And so it's sort of that combination of things, I think, is what's motivating him to just want to burn everything to the ground. And
he's got some elements of his great uncle. Who would Anakin be to him? It would still be his grandfather, right?
His grandfather.
Yeah. They still got that kind of idea of I am powerful enough that I should be able to shape and do the things that I want to do. And also, if you look at it, I really enjoyed the multiple perspectives of what happened at the Jedi, at Luke's Jedi Temple, because from Luke's perspective, he kind of twisted and shut it down. But from Kylo's perspective, he was just going to kill him. But then when we find out the truth was Luke had a moment of weakness, thought about striking him down, and what he said, like a breeze, it went away immediately. But to Kylo, who has a little bit of potential dark side in him, that was an immediate trigger of this guy's trying to kill me. Yeah. And so then you've got that idea of, he betrayed my last master, betrayed me. This master in the beginning is you're worthless, you're no good to me. Every person who is supposed to be his master, someone to look up to grow, has basically betrayed him. Yeah. And so
burn it all down, blaze your own trail.
Let's start up new.
Daddy issues to the nth degree.
But it was good that he's still back, because I don't think the Huxley guy could carry being the key villain.
And you need somebody with a lightsaber on the bad side. You gotta have somebody has to be the villain with a lightsaber.
Apparently you don't, because those elite guards, their armor could sometimes stop lightsabers, other times couldn't.
Well, it did never stop a lightsaber. I don't think their weapons could.
That lady's gauntlets.
Oh, the gauntlets.
Kylo swung his lightsaber, and she just nope.
Well, I guess it's only certain parts, because they have to have what is it? It's from the old,
Vibroblade.
Yeah, or vibranium, or not? Yeah, something like that.
They did do a good job. I think they actually did a good job, because I was looking at that inconsistency, and I was okay, I guess it's maybe just similar to body armor, where a direct shot will take care of it. And there were also some really good shots where when they did do stab wounds, they were either under plates or in weak spots. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was actually pretty impressed with how they handled that potential inconsistency. Yeah. This was a cool scene.
Yeah, I really liked that scene. It was a lot of fun. It was and another great scene that we didn't get a lot of in the first one, in 7, because we didn't really get a good space battle. That first opening scene of the film with Poe
being a cool guy,
being Poe, and which is always fun, was really cool, because like I said, we didn't really get a good space battle in the first one. We get kind of two, well, I guess really just one in this one, but that opening scene was really interesting, and I really liked I thought the bombers were really different and cool. Mm-hmm. It kind of. Because it's funny, I was what happened to proton torpedoes? Did we just have real bombs now?
Yeah,
I guess we're that...
Did we realize the Y-Wings were the least cool ships, so we just got rid of the Y-Wing bomber class? That's done?
Well, because they used to drop... And the Y-Wings dropped, energy bombs. I could have swore they dropped, glowy,
Yeah, they essentially looked like they just took the propulsion of a proton torpedo and instead just dropped it.
Just dropped them. This one, it was a whole rack full of fucking bombs, and I thought it was interesting, and it was a very tense opening sequence. I really liked all of that happened there with
it was
the
good.
Dreadnought class and all that sort of stuff, and the Rose's sister, that whole thing I thought was neat. I thought she was going to force pull the thing down. Which I guess she kind of did. Yeah. Because I think that would be neat, and which they kind of are in this. I think they're going to have to start showing more people using the Force that aren't just the Skywalkers, or you know what I mean?
I think you could also interpret it the way of just so not everybody can use the Force, but that doesn't mean that the Force also doesn't have its own that energy. Yeah. So when she is that desperation, when she does call out, not necessarily calling out to the Force, but calling out to just whatever God or whoever they believe in, that there is a response to that. Yeah. I like that idea that just everybody, you don't have to be Force sensitive to let the Force play a role with you. And I think they even did that with in Rogue One with the one guy, the Force is with me, the Force is with you, or whatever, that guy.
I'm over the Force is one with me. Or
yeah,
whatever.
It's like he's not Force sensitive, but he was Force sensitive, but he wasn't a Jedi or anything. He was just in tune with it. Yeah. And so there's varying degrees.
That's what I mean. I think that, and that's what I mean when I say more people using the Force. I don't mean more people being Jedi and like Force pushing people around. I mean more people just like passively, like in those moments, like kind of the Force being a thing that not just Jedi. Like randomly can like fucking throw rocks around, but like everybody now and then can can sort, it makes it a and it also, like we were saying earlier with Rey being not from some legacy. If everybody, not everybody, but if you're really in a moment, the Force can kind of interact with anybody or help a lot of people. Yeah. It what's the word I'm looking for? It
expands.
It expands, but that's not
broadens.
The word I'm looking for. Oh shit. It's an economics word, but I can't place it. I know.
Yeah, you're talking to the wrong person.
Trickle down. Trickle down Forceonomics.
Trickle down Forceonomics. That's a good one. No, it makes it so that it's not this special rare thing. Like I said, that only super special people can do. Like, yeah, they're really good at it, but like other people, and I think that's the thing. It democratizes, that's not really an economic term, but that's the word I was looking for. Democratizes the Force to where the Resistance as a whole, it becomes more of a thing of, instead of just super special people, it's it's everybody.
Well, people have done that. I mean, that's been done in many different ways before. Like the idea of, there's some interpretations of like the Greek gods that I like, where their power comes from worship, and so they become more powerful as a people, and it becomes more tangible in the world. Or also even in like, reach out to Game of Thrones, like as dragons come into the world, like magic becomes more of a thing, and so the more people become aware of the Force, the more in tuneness there is to it, and so
it's like it rebounds off each other. Yeah, I just think it was interesting, and I think I hope they keep doing more of that, and I think the final scene with the little kid, we're kind of seeing more of that, although he's probably going to end up being a Jedi.
Or he just grabbed that broom and we were all way off.
I think he's going to end up being a Jedi.
I think it jumped like a couple inches into his hand. I saw it.
But it just bothers me so much that either that kid was... So the end scene is like a call, almost like a call to arms of being like, the Force is in... The rebellion has been sparked or whatever.
Because the rebellion is like done. Like there's like 20 of them left.
Yeah. But that's enough for a spark. Yeah. Because as Leia said when they were looking at a broken lightsaber among the 8 people that were on the Falcon, we've got the Porgs... we've got everything we need.
We got the power of Porg Nation behind us, so...
Yeah, and so then these little kids are like telling the story of, Luke Skywalker did this, and then this like giant alien comes to presumably beat them for having fun. There'll be no fun, slave children. So this kid walks away, and as he goes off screen
to sweep,
it looks like he goes to grab a broom, but it doesn't look like it got close enough to him, and he almost like, I guess, fantasias it to him. And like there's like a 2-inch gap where he grabs it. Yeah. But then he doesn't do anything else with it, and we're expecting something to happen. So it just it almost was like an Inception thing of like, was that Force?
Well, but I mean, nothing else happens, but we get the moment, just the shot, you get the callback to Luke, the kind of, on the crest, looking out, and he holds that up, and the moon catches the broom handle, and it looks very much like a lightsaber in that moment, just sort of as he's holding it, because it's reflecting the moonlight. You know what I mean? So it doesn't do anything with the Force, but it's very clearly like, this kid's the next generation. And speaking of the ending, I think that's, when I said they can do anything they want, what I think they're probably going to do, what it seems like they're setting up for, is I think we're going to have a huge time jump, or not huge maybe, but a pretty not insignificant time jump between the end of this movie and the start of Episode 9. I would have to imagine for them, in order to have built an army again, and for the, I'm not saying their army is going to be all these little kids that grow up and join their army.
A child army.
That's the way to go.
It's sometimes the cheapest army you can buy.
Sure, you have to feed them way less than grown men. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a pretty significant jump where the Republic or the First Order is in power for a while, and it sort of turns back to how like A New Hope was, where they're starting the rebels are starting to gain power again and are starting to grow, and because it also gives us time for Rey to kind of become more of a Jedi and less of just like, she's good with this lightsaber because she was good with a staff, and she's good with the Force because she's just like rawly
just
connected or whatever. But to actually become more of like
a fighter
time
for her to refine her powers.
And really, and for Poe to kind of become more of the figurehead of the movement. Yeah. And that sort of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a pretty good time jump. I don't know. It's kind of what I was thinking based on how they ended it. But
I would either say that or less likely, I would think that there's almost a very small time jump and you're actually almost using this trilogy to like set up the future. Yeah. Just like they're essentially going to try and get this turn this resistance back into the way. Is it the rebellion again now?
Well, they've kind of morphed it back to the rebellion. They've kind of turned it back
to the rebellion.
Because they had a lot of moments where they kept calling them rebels or, you know, and John Boyega's big moment where she calls them scum and he's like, rebel scum. You damn right. And when your favorite purple-haired lady says, run rebels or
Lord
whatever.
Dern, isn't that?
Yeah, Lord Dern. She says like rebels. She said something.
They definitely say rebellion more than resistance, and it gradually becomes more and more.
And it's because after in the seventh one, they are resisting a small group of the First Order that are trying to take over, and there is no rebellion necessarily because the First Order is the rebellion.
Right. And the Senate just gets wiped.
But then the Senate gets wiped out, and now the First Order has sort of taken over again. So now they're morphing back into a rebellion because now, while the First Order was kind of the rebellion in the first one, or in 7, the Resistance has become the rebels again in this one because they're the small force fighting back against.
So that's my other theory, is that you just go small scale so that you almost use this to clear the board. Like, let's get the Skywalkers and let's get that passed off the map so that when we do start these new ones, we can do a time jump without many of the main like key characters, and then you can move forward from there and still bring back like Rey or Finn into more like experience roles like that. That'd be
interesting,
for a future however many.
Yeah,
movies.
they could do that. That's true. I guess my only thing is like I'm not sure what they would because unless there's a whole bunch of rebels, and maybe I'm looking at it too much because they were pushing so heavily. I guess I wouldn't think there would need to be a time jump if they, instead of just showing little kids being like, the rebellion, they had shown like adults,
capable people.
Like, like they cut to the Mos Eisley Cantina and their guys are sitting around in the bar or something, and you see they have the ring, something that like showed it was spreading to more than just little kids telling stories, because then you have an actual ready army, people ready to come help you, and now that's implied.
Or just
still.
Like acts of rebellion by adults
or something, and maybe that's how we start the next movie, is that they did spread. It wasn't just little kids. I mean, that would be silly to just be little kids. There's something about the way they only showed little kids made me felt like that's where they were putting.
You needed distance.
Yeah. But chances are it's just going to be it will have spread throughout the rest of the spaces. I was really hoping, and this is a little thing, when she said they were sending out the distress beacon to the outer limits, or we have
the outer rim.
The outer rim. There's help. We have friends out there. They'll come help us, and then eventually nobody comes. But I was really hoping that people were going to come, and that it were going to be led by one Lando Calrissian. Now, I knew he wasn't in this film because it'd been confirmed like 4 different ways, but I was hoping they had lied to us over and over and over again.
There it was.
And Lando Calrissian came in like a new model version of the Millennium Falcon.
It's a real sleek and sexy Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. It would have been amazing. I'm hoping maybe that happens in the 9th one, but we'll see.
Bigger picture, the only thing that I can think of now, and just trying to like think about like what's coming and what happened in these last 2 movies. Even if the rebellion like is successful, the Senate lasted 20 years?
Yeah.
Before it was just completely destroyed 20, in an instant.
Yeah.
So like that idea almost throws me off a little bit of how quickly the Republic was just obliterated, like immediately by blowing up but they had this gun that destroyed like 10 planets and then they knocked it out like that. Like that almost makes you worry of like, so what do you do? Yeah. You would just do like, oh, we won again, and then
I know. It's interesting. I actually didn't really love that about in retrospect about Force Awakens, that they wiped out the Senate so quickly, easily just to make the First Order such a giant threat again. I really think I would have preferred over, and now we're on the path we're on, and I'm enjoying it as it is. But I think going way back, I think I would have preferred more if it was somehow where it wasn't just immediately the First Order so quickly overpowering them again, and them being the spunky resistance fighter. You know what I mean? I don't know how you would have done it to make it compelling and interesting and still have it sort of, because I mean we're telling a story of the underdogs, that's kind of the whole point, but like I don't know, I just think there could have been an interesting route to take where the Senate or something still exists and it doesn't all get blown up in the first movie and then we're all of a sudden the First Order.
I mean, you could still argue that people were like in the rebuilding efforts or like people couldn't put armies together and the complexities of, well, if we do have a Senate, like we have some planets that have armies and other planets that don't want to put their armies together and like the complexities of like democracy. And
I guess, see, that's the thing when you say that, and that's where I was going, but then I think about it and go, but that's what we did in the prequels, kind of, to an extent, where the Civil War, the separatist planets, and the, like, that's a lot of kind of the conflict of the prequels is political strife and separatist planets rebelling against.
That's true, but I think there was so much like goofball antics in the prequels that like those like big things get lost because there's Gungans.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think you still could have done something like that. But I mean I guess we're getting nitpicky as to an overall thing, but.
Yeah. No, I agree. I felt the same way. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see where they take it from here. But they can kind of do whatever they want, like I said.
I would just have to, more so just for the future, I'd have to be like, well, what are you going to do? Because, like, what can you do? Like, well, we're bringing it back again. Like, we're doing it again. Yeah. It's like, okay, so that, are we going to get movies 5 years later where it gets destroyed again? You can only be underdog for so long.
Right.
And then it just loses its potency.
And maybe they go into a similar route kind of with what... I don't know, Luke didn't really go as much that direction as I kind of hoped he would in this movie, of sort of the middle road.
The gray.
And I was, maybe they won't go that direction where they, if they do win or whatever, where we're not creating a galactic empire or republic, where we're doing sort of like a separate nation state, or planet states that are independent. I don't know how, maybe they don't seek to like conglomerate it so much, maybe, and let just people do their own thing. I don't know. I don't know but yeah, maybe something like that would be an interesting route. Like, look, we can't do the Senate again because either somebody corrupt takes over, or it gets blown up.
So just need to do better. They're going to do like an interplanetary United Nations.
Yeah, like the United Nations, which is kind of what the Senate was like, but. Except the Senate had actual power, whereas the United Nations doesn't really have actual power.
It's just when you look when you think about it too much, like it's just the cracks start to show, and you just kind of like, it's still Star Wars. There's still lightsabers and porgs and all the good things that we've loved for decades.
Yeah, and a lot of those interesting political things do get hashed out in the books, and are sort of there's a lot of more interesting political machinations that go on in the books that kind of answer like, what is this universe? Like, what is going on with all these planets and all that sort of thing, but. That's a little micro or macro scale for the movies, for the big blockbuster movies. But I don't know if there are any other spoilers that we missed that I wanted to talk about. I'm trying to think if there was any other moments that... I don't think so. Oh, there was one moment that I expected that didn't happen. I was like sure it was going to happen, which was... I guess was the thing. Was like... So the moment in Force Awakens where Rey grabs the lightsaber out of the snow after Kylo's trying to get it, saw coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
There was like 3 or 4 moments in this movie where I thought, because I was like, oh, I know what's going to happen. I mean, it's obvious, but in Force Awakens. And I felt that same way in this, and then it didn't happen, to where that like made me go, well, that's cool. And like one of those was the moment where Kylo and Rey, after they fight everybody and then they're force fighting over the lightsaber. 100% thought Luke was going to walk into the room and
this is my bitch.
Yes. I mean, it would have been amazing. The whole audience would have exploded.
Yep.
And then they didn't do it, which I actually was like, oh, cool. They did, because it kind of would have been the same moment from Force Awakens to an extent.
Yeah.
And I was actually glad they didn't do that. But so, but like there was that, and there was a couple of them like that where it's like, oh, 100% know what's about to happen. Even right before it, I thought I knew what was about to happen with Kylo Ren. And now, in retrospect, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But I thought he might kill himself in the moment with Snoke. Like, I literally thought he might turn that lightsaber when he's, like, pointing it towards her. I thought he was going to turn it and stab himself with it, because that would force, because I thought maybe he was just so conflicted and just so, like, fucking...
Just said, that's whatever.
Yeah, well, and
I didn't get that.
No, well, something about the way they're setting it up, and also, because then it would force it would be like the ultimate fuck you to Snoke, because because Snoke talked about how he manipulated him so much, and now I guess killing Snoke is an even better fuck you to Snoke, but like
more effective.
I didn't think about the part with the lightsaber, so I was like, what's the biggest fuck you to Snoke right now that he could do, because he was obviously very mad at him, and I was like, he's not going to run across the room and cut him in half with a lightsaber. So I was like, if he kills himself though, that's a pretty big fuck you to Snoke, and sort of redeeming, and I could see that in like a character arc way. It kind of makes sense. And again, I'm glad they didn't do it, and what they did was cool. But like, I don't know, there was a couple moments like that throughout the film where I was like, oh, this is about to happen, and it didn't happen. I was like, oh, cool, that's different than what I thought was going to happen. Which I don't think there were many moments like that in Force Awakens where I was like, oh, this is going to happen, and then that thing did happen, like for the most part. So I liked that a lot about it.
It's good to see Yoda.
Yeah, that was cool, and it looked. It
looked bad at the beginning and then got better.
The first shot looked a little strange, but what I did love about it is that he looked very much puppety. Yeah, he looked very much like the puppet from. Yeah.
Well, because that's the thing. The first one looked like really fake and cinematronic and like bright. Or not cinematronic, but animatronic.
Well, it's a puppet.
Or no, not animatronic. The first one looked extremely blue and extremely CGI to me. And then as they let him go, it started to look more like a puppet. And they used the fire so that they could like tint down on the blue glow. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I really liked his little cameo. Did you like Yoda showing up, Katie?
Yeah, I did.
It's good to see also Yoda using dark side powers to control lightning.
I thought that was hilarious. I was like, he just fucking struck that tree with lightning.
Once again, this force power stuff is just way out of line with what people can and can't do.
He's one of the most powerful Jedi of all time.
True.
If he wants to make some lightning strike a tree as a ghost, he can make it happen, I feel like.
I think the best part of that was that it set up him doing his Yoda giggle.
Yeah.
Which we haven't had, and that was one of the most pleasant parts about him, is that he is in a sense a kooky old man in the first ones. Well,
and it made sense in the timeline because it's the Yoda of the prequels, which had his moments, but a lot of people were disappointed with is a 60-year younger or 50-year younger Yoda than the Yoda from Empire, and this was very much obviously the Empire Yoda. Running around with his cane, laughing at shit, and like whacking a Luke on the head with
But then also having like those serious moments of reflection and stuff.
Yeah, that was really fun.
I was very happy with that scene. I thought it was really good. And then they just like two bros chilling, watching
a tree
their
burn.
legacy burn to the ground. But apparently it didn't, because somehow those texts are totally fine.
Now you said this. I missed that in the who had them?
They were in a drawer.
When Finn was getting the blanket for Rose.
There they were.
So I guess she stole them?
She stole them, or there were just more?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. There's just an extra copy. They had the library copy on the Millennium Falcon.
Well, he did say these are I guess he said they're only remaining text, but the original text, so.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Obi-Wan stored some on the Millennium Falcon
before he went senile.
I don't know. Who knows? I think that was all spoiler. I'm trying to think I don't know if there were any other moments that I wanted that really knocked my socks off. Visually, and we even talked about this, but it was there was lots of really cool, visually stunning moments in this film. Mm-hmm. A couple that stuck out. The moment when Luke walks out through the flaming doors with all the walkers in the background, that shot was awesome. I mean, it's basically the shot from the poster for Star Trek Into Darkness, but still,
there's not that. Yeah, that shot's one that we've kind of that has been done in one way or another. But the light speed shot,
cool. And the light speed shot really in particular, where Laura Dern, or whatever the hell her name was, Vice Admiral
Dr. Sadler,
something.
I don't know.
Vice Admiral Holden,
Dr. Sadler,
something like Dr. Sadler. When she goes to light speed through all the Star Destroyers, it was really fucking cool looking, and then the sound all just cuts out and just like everything's cut in half. That was really neat.
For the scale of her character, it was pretty. I liked what they did with her. They didn't give her too much, but there was she had some is she bad? Is she not a bad guy? But
she might have been a traitor. I thought she might have been a traitor.
Is she like a bad person, or is she a coward?
They kind of set it up like that.
They play it because he says, well, and I mean, we ultimately know they're just tracking him, but they set it up like he goes, oh, well, I got him on a string, and we don't know that she's not like just corresponding with the Empire somehow. Other than we do find out that they're just tracking.
Oh yeah,
actually,
I didn't catch that at all. Of being like, oh, do they have a spy?
That's what I kind of thought, was that she might be literally when he calls her a traitor. Wow, I thought she might actually be like a traitor.
They were setting it up too hard.
Oh, that's the
for
thing,
me.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
That totally blew right past me. It's just, I think I was just again too taken away by that purple hair. I hate that purple hair. It's
just the way she played it and everything.
I found her dress so much more distracting than her purple hair.
She was so out of place.
With all of it.
Which was part of the reason I thought.
But as a spy, you would want to not be out of place.
Yeah, I guess.
It's not like, I'm going to go spy on these people. Everybody's in combat gear all the time. I will be wearing a tight purple gown with purple hair to match.
It just seems really impractical to be wearing a flowing gown.
It doesn't.
Times.
Well, Mon Mothma,
but hers also wasn't. But that was like, I'm more with like yours. It was like that was the more like cocktail dress.
Like it was flowy and dragging on the floor.
That's how Mon Mothma's dress was.
But hers were more of like robes.
Yeah.
Like hers. This lady was like she
had, like,
put on the right shoes and go to the club afterwards.
The cowl thing that made her neck look miles
she looked
long.
To me, what I kept thinking of was she looked like somebody from the Hunger Games that like from one of the rich districts. Yeah. They're like going to watch the games and like watch all those little poor kids kill each other.
Yeah, she just looked very out of place and for her to be like command the respect of like that. Like I was agreeing with Poe Dameron when he was like, that's her? It doesn't seem like her. I was like, no, it doesn't. It does not seem like her, whoever that is.
Yeah. Speaking of a couple more things, one thing I really liked that I thought was interesting was that the whole storyline with her and Poe and sort of the power struggle and the disagreement and the strife within the resistance, within the rebellion, and how it's not just like we're all just like, yeah, let's do this. There was sort of that like, I mean, they could go so far as like outright stunning the shit out of each other. Like half of them are on Poe's side and the other half are on her side, and they end up shooting the shit out of each other. And I thought that was interesting and kind of a fun twist. I had one other thing that I forgot.
I liked it that Poe was like wrong most of the time.
Yeah.
Like he's still an incredibly talented individual, but still very young and naive too.
He's a hothead.
To the politics of also like, even in the beginning, it was like, yeah, we destroyed that one thing, but like our people are more valuable than their people. Yeah. Like there's a cost to all of this, and he still needs to learn that lesson. And I liked that he didn't immediately like learn that lesson.
No, it wasn't. He didn't know it. He still didn't by the end of the movie. I mean, he's learned it now, but he didn't succeed in this movie.
He kind of got it towards the end when they were like, pull back, like this is lost. Like pull back with their little sand speeders, which I enjoyed those thoroughly.
Was awesome.
Like, those are so dumb.
I loved how janky they were.
His leg pokes through the cockpit. He's like, what?
And they're just open.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what I noticed in this movie, and they do it in a lot of movies, I feel like more and more, but I noticed it a lot in this one because they said in the beginning that they had 13 snow speeders, or whatever those things are. And I swear to God, we see like 15 of them get blown up over the course of that battle.
There's wreckage everywhere.
Well, I mean, they kept showing shots of them getting blown up. I'm like, they only had 13 of them. You can't like.
Well, that's the same thing as like the classic like there's 6 bullets in that revolver.
Yeah,
Brendan.
But
Fraser,
it's a little
you've
different.
shot it 13 times.
Right. How dare you? He has as many bullets as he wants in his revolver.
Of course he does.
But no, I don't know, something, and that was the one scene in particular. It was like they had a very limited number. And also, I didn't understand what they were even going to do in those. Like, I was like, you're going to driving straight into
guns?
a hole. They did, because Finn tried to shoot at one point, and they were melted by the laser. But which I'm not sure how Finn didn't melt, because he was in that laser in an open
I think
cockpit,
he was on the outside skirt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Force.
That
was a very, like, almost New Hope reminiscence of, like, oh, my gun's down, like, oh, I'm going to just drive in and kind of do whatever I need to do.
I had one. Dang it! Popped in my head and I forgot. I know, I'm hungry too. Well,
the creatures on Luke Skywalker's planet were the worst.
I wasn't a big fan of those. I thought those were a little silly.
There was what looked like little nun ladies that just swept. And he's like, what are those things? She's like, what are those things? He's like, oh, they're caretakers. They've been sweeping the Jedi Order, which hasn't been around for, at this point, 150 years, but nobody told them. I didn't. He should have told them first. Like, no, I'm going to keep these ladies to just clean up. And then there's also just these giant tit monsters on the sea that literally their job is to, I assume, sit there, let him get
drink
blue milk out of them, sloppily.
I still contend that he brought those with him.
From Tatooine?
From wherever, yeah. I don't know if they're native to Tatooine.
That shot was so unsettling, the way that he's, because they're, also keep in mind, their milk jugs are at their crotch.
Yes.
They're just literally these like giant slouching like fat creatures.
It was very, yes.
And as there's like all these looks to Rey, like as he's getting milk from the thing turns and looks at Rey and is like, "Bleh." And then as he's beard just glistening with this milk, slops down, then he looks at Rey
like smirks
and is like, yeah, this is the good shit. Just like, what? Why is this here? If not to just be a nod to blue milk, but why did you have to make it so creepy?
I agree. I thought they were extra creepy looking. Like
the whole thing, like, it looked like a walrus with boobs that had Watto's face. Yeah. And it's like...
It looked like something to me out of, like, like a very different film. Just like a very... almost like something out of, like, Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's, like, these weird monsters that, like, don't really fit.
Well, it's because... Yeah, Star Wars has never had... Like, they always have, like, really interesting and, like, goofy creatures, and I appreciate it. But that was the first one that I ever looked at in Star Wars. It was like... You shouldn't exist. Like, you look like you're just, like, constantly in pain.
Jabba the Hutt?
No, he looked fine because he's just a giant slug monster. But this thing was, like, hairy and gross and, like, sitting there, like, wishing it wasn't there.
You don't know that. They might love their life watching the sea. They probably get to hang out with porgs all day.
I bet porgs harass the shit out of those things all the time. Because they just... Oh, my God. That was so weird. And just really sucked me out of it.
I thought it was funny. I do know what you're saying, but it didn't bother me. I thought it was pretty funny.
Luke loves that blue milk.
Oh my God. He really loves that blue milk. Oh, Katie, anything else to add before we give our final thoughts on this? I had another point, but now I can't remember what it was.
One brief moment that I thought was kind of weird was when Rey was like explaining the Force, and it like turned into a nature documentary for like a minute.
Oh, where the cuts where Luke is explaining the Force.
No, it's Rey talking about what she feels.
Life, death.
It has that one shot that you see in every commercial for every nature documentary where the little green things come out
sprout
of the
quickly.
Yeah. It's like, they got that stock footage of little green ththings growing. Threw it in.
And then baby porgs.
Yeah, baby porgs, dead baby porgs. I actually liked that. I thought that was neat. I thought it was an interesting way to do that and kind of explain that and the extremes, because that's where he's pushing more towards like you got to go find the middle. Force is a part
of all things.
Yeah. And I thought it was an interesting way to do it only with things on that island. Like, you know what I mean? Like to sort of explain, like everywhere, even on this island with almost nothing on it. Yeah. You have all of those.
Every ecosystem has the Force as a part of it.
Yeah, and I thought it was an interesting way to visualize that.
Visually, it was a little out of place for me.
The one shot only that I thought that was the fast motion growing. I was like, that's because it's so, like, you see that in every, you know. I thought that was a little strange, but I liked that scene. I thought it made a lot of sense. So, I don't know. I thought it was an interesting way to kind of visually portray that. So, I think that's it. My final, I would say, I'm gonna try to do this. It's hard, but I'm trying to give it a 0 to 10 score on first viewing, 3 hours out. I think I'd probably give it an 8, maybe ish. I don't know, in that ballpark. Where I would say if you would have asked me right after Force Awakens, I probably would have given it a 9, maybe. Mm-hmm. And now I have a feeling that upon second or third viewing, those numbers will flip. Yeah. I think it will literally flip to where I would say Force Awakens probably like an 8, and this will probably end up being like a 9 for me, maybe. But I'll have to see. I don't know. What do you think, Katie?
I'm gonna give it an A-.
Oh, so you just
at this moment.
That's right. You're a teacher, so you get to go letter grades.
Now I have to find a different rubric.
4 or 5 out of 5 stars.
I gotta find a different metric here.
How many porgs are you giving it?
On the scale of midichlorian to porg in the growth cycle, I would say newborn chick porg.
All right.
Which is roughly a 7.5.
There you go. Newborn chick porg, 7.5. I like that.
I also wouldn't know how to scale on the midichlorian count.
That seems like there's a lot of divisions down there, and then porg is it's weighted towards porg.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, so that's our review and discussion of The Last Jedi. It's definitely worth seeing. We saw it in 3D on IMAX, which is an experience. That was it was really neat. I mean, not again. It's Star Wars. Everybody's already seen it. Probably.
If there's anybody that we're swaying with
guys, really, you should check out this little movie called Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I think you might like it. But yeah, if you want to hear more further thoughts with it, me and Kyle will be doing a review of it on our YouTube channel, Good Bad or Bad Bad. Nice. At some point. So I'm really interested to see what Kyle thinks, because he's either going to really like it or really hate it, and
Kyle
I'm not
hates
sure
everything.
Yeah, I know he does, but he doesn't always. He liked, what did he like recently? He liked a thing that I couldn't believe that he enjoyed.
Did he like Baby Driver?
Yeah, he really liked Baby Driver. That wasn't it. It was a different movie. Justice League. He really liked Justice League, which I thought was interesting because he hated all the rest of them.
So I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go down the DC train right now. I'm not going to go down that talk track.
Sam loves DC movies. Not all. But yes, not all of them. Not Justice League, apparently. But yes, so our next episode of This Film Is Lit, which is coming out Tuesday, is our review of The Muppet Christmas Carol, which will also feature a one Sam Pixley. We're about to record it. Muppet enthusiast. We're about to record it here in a little while. It'll be fun because Sam has not seen or read. Katie has both read and seen, and I have just seen. So we have covered the spectrum of viewing / reading of A Christmas Carol and The Muppet Christmas Carol. So you'll see that Tuesday, or hear that Tuesday. Until then, guys, keep reading books, keep watching movies.
Go see The Last Jedi.
And go see The Last Jedi.